Hello again. Well, after that first exchange with letters with Philip, now Laura continues in her own narrative and follows Olivia's instructions. This is chapter the fourth, Apparition. Olivia's description of the frozen water had been almost poetic. No doubt she herself had stood here, gazing upon it many a time. It reflected nothing of my figure and form, but it might well provide a more abstract mirror. I felt I knew why she had asked me to walk down here. She was not only craving me to understand her, but was also warning me to not become too much like her. Olivia was not merely a clever girl, she was insightful, well and wise beyond her years. Just as was her sister, but that for utterly diverging reasons, of course. I winced at the thought of it, and as I did so the ice cracked beneath my feet. Shuffling off the lakefront, I retreated by way of the lower ridge path. It was wondrous, to borrow Olivia's term. The ice had crystallized on the tree branches, presenting a sophisticated skeleton of denuded nature, glittering and glistening, its brilliant glaze blinding me in one moment, expressing a translucent vision the next. I passed my palm over one of the lower branches of the largest tree yet, just a twig, really, hanging down, stooping to render its solemn greeting. I caressed that same tree's trunk, uttering a smallish orison to the earth which myself and itself shared. We are related, you and I, and for over 6 years the entire world has known this, or been forced to confront it. For I had read Charles Darwin's momentous monograph soon after entering college. It was, outside of the theological school, universally acclaimed. In a manner of speaking, one of the deans had said that it encapsulated the spirit of Cambridge, which struck me as odd given the medieval origins of such an ivory pile. Really, Cambridge was nothing modern at all, unlike Darwin, who had gathered up all of the eons past and thrown them bodily into the future. To that end, it had been a most inspirational read, in spite of its unending technical detail. I sighed aloud. All of this evolution, only to produce a family like the one I was employed by. All of this progress, painstaking and groping, blindness before sight, darkness before vision, heat before light. Then I saw it. If the figure had been standing upright, I surely would have screamed, which is something I have never before done. When the lawyer had gently told me of my parents' shared fate, I had crumpled to the ground, begging to be swallowed up by the earth and therefore being able to rejoin my mother and father. I wept, but I did not cry out, and the thought of whatever courage I might have had back then steadied me in the face of this apparition. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, just to be sure I was not myself engaged by some eldritch illusion. No, there it lay. Steeling my nerve, I approached it. There could be little enough doubt about whom it had been. The muslin was fine enough, though not from Paris, I reckoned. Satin, and not silk, decorated it. The vestments had stood up well, but I imagined that the corpse had lain there for at least 6 months, and the ensuing winter had not been kind to it. There was little flesh left, and no odor could be scented upon the air. I did not investigate too closely, as you might imagine. The entirety of it was frozen solid, and that alone made it safe enough. Consorting with the dead was not part of my portfolio, either professionally or personally, but this body's appearance did, in this case, arrest a moment's further declination. The skull had been cleaved almost in two. I had to shake my own head at the sight of it and step back onto the path. Arching way up now, I stretched my neck out and breathed deeply. When again I leveled my face, my eyes espied, on the way down, another figure, high up on the ridge. I gasped, simply due to being startled. Dressed wholly in black, with a scarlet scarf round its neck, this very much living figure then did itself turn hurriedly and trotted down the higher ridge path which, at a further distance about 100 yards to my left, intersected the very one I stood upon. This person, witnessed from afar enough to preclude identification, was most definitely on a collision course with myself. Elsewise they would have turned back and proceeded over the ridge and back toward the house. Thus I had to once again steel myself, for whomever this might yet be, they might well have seen what I had just seen, and the more so, seen me seeing it. That was awkward and repetitive, unfit for any letter, let alone essay, but I allowed myself the momentary insult to the native language I adored, though it was true that German was a far more beautiful singing tongue, and decided to stride in the direction of said crossing, so as to not exhibit any hesitancy that might have emanated from guilt, either real or imagined. It was not long before my choice was rewarded, but then I had to gasp yet again. Thank you for taking my suggestion. I gather the view was worth it. My senses registered the sardonic timbre of the voice before my eyes fully comprehended the person of none other than Olivia, standing easily before me. She carried a heavy stick in her left hand and something in one pocket of her pea-coat, some item with an unexpected shape, which was spoiling her otherwise lovely youthful figure. The lake was as you described. I hedged now, as it was far from clear that the girl even knew about the body's lingering presence, let alone me discovering it. But this thought was blown to the winds in the very next moment. My first strike was with the blunt end of an axe, just to knock her down. The second was with the blade end. It nigh on crushed in her skull. Olivia had declaimed this without any sign that she herself acknowledged the slightest gravity appended to such an act. It took an effort on my part not to blink. I knew by now that this young woman respected only a kind of ancient right of honor, feudal, perhaps. No, it was older even than this, pagan rather, and indeed not that of any civilized pagan. Hearing no reply upon my counsel, she opted to continue. No doubt Hargreaves and perhaps my father dumped her off the ridge to make it look like either an accident or suicide. Hargreaves certainly would think that my father killed her, to right the wrong of mother hiring her in the first place. And yet you stand here and to my face tell me the truth of it. The gloves are not yet off, Miss Laura. What on earth is that supposed to mean? Have I been wrong in protecting you? Should I rather have acted as would any other governess when faced with your insolence and unconcern? You mean as did your predecessor act? No, you're far too handsome a woman to suffer such a fate. Even I would flinch at staving in your beautiful head. More to the point, Laura, you are a human being, with a conscience yet. You may even be in love. Not that I would know what that looked like, of course. I pity you. What else can I do? Pity is irrelevant, miss. My own sister pitied me as she lay down beside my naked form, there up in that hated room, the one in which you ply your odious trade. Your predecessor tired of me one fine afternoon at the end of last summer. She stripped me naked and took up a thin flexible cane that was made of whalebone. I could not feel my buttocks afterwards, and when I tried to flex them, they were as jelly. My back and the backs of my thighs were also wealed, though not near as much. I could not move, I could not speak. She then demanded that I get myself up and redress, and when I did not respond, she flogged me upon the back the once more, breaking her evil implement in three. She then threw the crook of the cane at my head, though with poor aim it touched me not, and stalked out of the schoolroom, slamming the door behind her. To this day I do not know how long I lay there. Father was in the city with my sister. When she returned searching for me, she then lay down beside me as I was, in and out of a dead faint. I felt her tears, as I myself could weep no more, and I have not wept ever since, no, not one single tear. After about 10 days I was healed enough to be able to respond to your predecessor's savagery, and indeed to my satisfaction. I now belatedly blinked. Olivia knew, with or without my consent or agreement, that it was perfectly safe to tell me of her deed, and the fact that she had every reason to commit such a violence made no impression on this security. No one would believe a girl then 12 would be capable of grisly murder, all the more so since she would not be able to dispose of the body. It was doubtless as she thought then. Hargreaves fully believed he was simply protecting the reputation of his employer, and not merely the knight's reputation, but plausibly his very life. Would they hang a 13-year-old girl, I wonder? I suppose they might, justice being what it is in general. Given that, I will shortly be making it further worth their while to do so. Now, then, Miss Laura, are you with me, or are you not? Good gods, how to respond to something like that? She did not menace, but there was something about her stance which nevertheless placed me on my most alert. I had no doubt that between her stick and perhaps whatever else she sported, which had been providing a flaw in her appearance, she could well strike me down then and there. Such a thing would never be put down to one of the children of Armand. No, their father had deliberately scapegoated himself, and I could utterly comprehend why he had in fact done so, given his other decisions. You are presuming upon your father. Is that just? What I am presuming is that he did, in fact, take the blame, however tacitly, for this first issue. My father has presumed upon my sister, and I shall not forgive him that. I shall never forgive him that. But in thence taking up my mission, he has balanced one equation, and once again one of his own making. Hugh Montfort is no coward, just a man with too many opportunities not to deny his manly desires. All well, his peers might say, but I am not a man, and my opportunities are thus framed by the desires of others. Tell me to my face, Laura, that you do not know this condition. Tell me that, and I shall forgive your own vapid cowardice. I cannot tell you that. I am fortunate to be able to state plainly that I, in large part, am in control of my own destiny. And before you impress me once again with your wit and acumen, I do know that the man I love is thus not a common type. Indeed, how blessed thou art! You might well have gone off to Paris with him. Yes, so am I wrong, knowing what you know, and what you now as well know, that you have stayed and shall continue to stay on the account of my sister and I? If so, I should not have asked you to make a choice. Is that an apology? Laura Endicott, what is that? In all of your studies, did they teach you the meaning of authentic honor? No? I have no clue what you are speaking of. My voice was now as chilly as was the air that gave it force. I could outrun this girl just by sheer stature. I also could catch her and restrain her through sheer bulk, though she was but 5 inches less than I in height. Of course, any of that presumed she could not land the first or even the second blow. But I did not want to fight with her, and in any manner. I did pity her, though she had made it plain she disdained such a thing. But she had used the term forgiveness. No, you wouldn't. I shall explain it to you. Honor is the outcome of a superior being dispensing with one inferior. Honor is the reward for beautifying the world by vanquishing what is ugly upon it. Honor is the feeling that is born through the adoration of that world by the beautiful being in love with the noble alone. I think I just passed this week's exercise in rhetoric. This last was added after a pause, which, in my faint stupor, had added a grandeur to the girl's statements. I am duly impressed by your sense of pagan romance, Olivia. You would do Guinevere herself proud, I imagine. Nevertheless, it is 1866, not 566, and murder is thus murder alone. Now, whether or not I am worthy of judging you is of course another matter. I can tell you this much. I do not think myself so worthy. If that is enough for you, then by all means carry on. I had flung down my glove, in spite of her earlier caveat. She now hesitated. She had clearly shot her best wad, to use the somewhat troublesome nautical expression, and was now looking for what might serve as a denouement. That I had not withered under her finest barrage had disappointed her, I could tell. That she would not be able to guess that in large part I in fact agreed with her sentiments was also a card for my side. No young woman could not have idolized a figure like Guinevere or the like, and I had deliberately used the name to let Olivia know I was nothing of the tradition of paternalism. For after all, I too was a young woman, and if anyone had ever mistreated me with such abuse as this courageous, if wrong-headed girl in front of me had suffered, I should seek to kill as well. Is it that you cannot judge me, or merely will not? The former, I assure you. But you asked, what am I? I consider myself honor embodied. What else should I answer? Why else should I answer your sister's call, risking my own future marriage to a man I truly love, if I were not? Perhaps I am not wiser than you, but I have lived longer even so, and I can tell you, Miss Olivia Montford, that honor comes in many forms, and is expressed in diverse ways. If honor demands murder, it equally demands submission. If it commands me to love an honorable man, it equally commends shunning one dishonorable. And so, honor too has its internal caveats. Your sister's sacrifice should be honored, and since you should not join in it, repeating the sin against love and yes, even life, then it falls to me to do so. There was another moment's pause, wherein Olivia was no doubt considering my counterpoint to her more Parthian rendition. Then, after taking in an incipient breath, she replied in a somewhat different tone. It is my error, assuming you walk your personal path alongside your professional opportunities. Now I do apologize. That in itself changes nothing else. I understand, and I accept your apology, young lady. I then listened to her plan of action. I was surprised that she shared it with me, unless the entire thing was a fabrication, but I was almost certain, given the source, that it was nothing of the sort. I am not a warrior, Olivia, rather merely an arts teacher and a lover. I would like to simply be a girl again, your age, before I lost my parents. Perhaps you think this is a romance equally, that I, at all of 20, should yet pine for 13. But this is the whole point, is it not? Do you imagine that I long to become a dark horse? That I would not have balked at such, if it were my destiny? No, clear the decks, by God, so I can damn well be just a girl again. So that was it. My predecessor was but a passing inconvenience, and in all honesty I mourned not one iota for her passing, and had only shrunk at the sheer violence thereof. But even here I had no right to shrink, given what she had done to the girl still before me. Beyond this, then, it was that girl's mother who was the source of enmity and violence, and as an ally, the mother's personal servant. It was perishingly clear that Olivia had not dismounted her war horse since axing the late governess, excuse the expression. In hearing of her mission, I realized that she had not given me any kind of detail by which it would be accomplished, only the beginning and the end, its moral and its purpose. This, too, was honor, I was forced to suppose, for the superior would not deign to speak of the trivial, or yet the mundane. But for me the question was not who was superior, but rather what, for to be a superior being was to surely understand something other than one's own being. For myself, art was the highest expression of humanity, and love its deepest. And then I realized the true reason why I so pitied Olivia, and, for that matter, her sister as well. Neither had an inkling of either in their lives. The best reason I choose to stay here is not to exempt your sister from her altruism, nor to provide you with a cover behind which you can gain your freedom, but rather to speak to your very beings of the most noble of human life. Good. Yes, good. That is your function. I am impressed that you recognize this about yourself, and I am grateful for your potential gifts. But, as the Americans like to say, business before pleasure. Art has waited long in any case. It can wait a tad longer. As for love, which I presume you also mean, well, I would have to be born again in order for love to caress me with its dulcet down and dew. Then be born again. I beg of you, Olivia, you are hardly more than a child. Life can be long, and it does not have to be as it has been. Tell that to history, Laura. Tell that to the world, to nations, to parents, to the schools, and to the jailer. You need not tell it to the likes of me. In as many days I shall end local history as it has been known, and you shall witness it. With that declaration of impending battle, she strode off, brushing right past me without looking back. There was nothing I could have done the more in adjusting her course. Her sails were full, topgallants stretched by a superheated wind, and her rigging humming with a simmering fury, for which there was no end clean and clear. I prayed then to the nature I worshipped, and to any possible deity that might yet be extant, that I should never feel that wind, that heat, that fury, and that I should e'er dwell only in art and in love. But, though my words soared aloft, my thoughts did indeed remain below. Thus, after all, I knew I had signed on to help crew the pirate vessel, bearing the vengeance of all girlhood upon its dark escutcheon.